Hi.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, my name is Alan Meyer. I am a founding board member of the Hebrew Seminary, going on 30 years, which is pretty amazing. I'm going to be rounding off numbers. In those 30 years, the Hebrew Seminary, which is trans-denominational, all-inclusive, unique institution, we have ordained over 20 rabbis. So before I get into a brief introduction about the seminary and how it started, let me introduce our participants. We are extremely honored to have one of our alumni, Rabbi Tirza Bat Israel Bat Levi Israel, who we had the honor of ordaining in 2017. We have Charlene Brooks, who is rounding third, heading towards ordination, having completed our 5-year program and is writing her thesis. We are an institute of higher learning, and therefore we follow the number of years, the rigorous curriculum, the thesis needed to head to ordination. And Charlene is in the home stretch. Both have extraordinary stories, which they will share, and exciting and things to talk about. Myself, I have my older daughter is deaf. We joined Congregation B'nai Shalom, which once again, rounding off numbers, started 50 years ago under the student rabbinate of Rabbi Douglas Goldhammer, whose vision remains strong as he remains extremely active as the senior rabbi of Congregation B'nai Shalom Hebrew Association of the Deaf, which is the full name of the congregation, and founded, going on 30 years, the Hebrew Seminary, which originally was called the Hebrew Seminary of the Deaf, is called the Hebrew Seminary, and Rabbi Goldhammer is our president. The seminary, of course, pre-COVID, is housed at B'nai Shalom in Skokie, Illinois. As I said, we are trans-denominational. We're all-inclusive. We're unique in that we have a bona fide seminary program. We also teach Kabbalah, healing prayer, sign language, deaf culture, which and I can go on and on. Rabbi Goldhammer has written 2 books on healing prayer. So our students are equipped not only with the basics of being a rabbi, but with so much more and so much more in-depth awareness of, as I said, Kabbalah and healing. And of course, we are dedicated to serving the extremely underserved deaf community, deaf Jewish community throughout not only the United States, but the world. We are very proud of all of our ordinees. We just last week actually had a Zoom alumni meeting. We had 18 of our rabbinate alumni, and all of whom hold significant positions, whether they are pulpit rabbis or teachers or college chaplains. So you can find out more at hebrewseminary.org. So I also want to introduce Kathy Silvern, who is our interpreter. She interprets at the Hebrew Seminary as well as B'nai Shalom, and has been doing both for many years. And in the world of interpreting, it's a highly complex and intricate job, and Kathy does it as well as anybody. Becky Edelberg is, last but not least, our marketing and fundraising manager, and she will wrap up our presentation. We're trying to keep this, our presentation, within 45 or 50 minutes and leave time for Q&A. It's very informal. If anybody wants to interrupt, that's fine. So we're going to sort of break it up in 2 segments each. Rabbi Tirza and Charlene both have stories that could take hours. So I'm going to ask Rabbi Tirza to tell us a little bit about her story, how she became part of our seminary, and now for 4 years a rabbi of great esteem. And it's an extreme honor to introduce her. Rabbi Tirza, take it away.
Oh, thank you, thank you. It's a great honor just to be before all of you, but especially before my teachers. And I hope that I am making them proud. I grew up in a typical African-American community on the west side of Chicago during the 1950s. Both my parents worked outside of the home, so that meant that grandparents and other relatives and elders kind of took care of the kids during the day while, our parents worked outside the home. But in particular, I had an uncle who was an ordained minister, and he was a mild-mannered, soft-spoken, but leader of a congregation that I respected so much, because when he spoke, he spoke with wisdom. And what he taught me more than anything else was to know yourself, was to find your path, to understand what truth is, and be accountable to your relationship with God. Those are the things, the principles that we saw in our home, as how he led his life, and it's what he taught all the time. So he didn't speak often, but when I was in his company, he always had the Bible open. He was always studying the Bible, and it just struck me how committed this man was to his craft. So it was his influence, actually, that started me on my quest to find God. Who was this God that he kept speaking about, and my mother expected us to get to know? And so I was challenged as a young child to read the entire Bible. And back then, in the 1950s, we had what they call the Old Testament and the New Testament. It was a library-sized book that always remained open. And I would, take note of the pictures, the painting, Leonardo da Vinci, all these great paintings of biblical topics. So it was very intriguing to turn the pages. And so, oftentimes I would wonder, like, where are the Black people? So, so it kept me intrigued. So I studied many religions, actually. I studied at the Baha'i Temple, I studied Islam, I studied the various sects of Christianity, but it wasn't until I really studied Isaiah chapter 44, where it says, I am the first and I am the last. There is none before me. And I wanted to be among the people that the Creator, through Isaiah, was speaking to. Who were those people, and what was the mission? Of course, I'm articulating it far better now than I understood it when I was 8, 9, and 10. But I remember the quest. I still have that quest. That quest has not gone away. It's still there. I just understand it better as a mature individual, and of course, having gone through the seminary that gave me structure and gave me language. So when I was in class at the seminary, I already understood oftentimes what my mentor, Dr. Goldhamer, was speaking about. But what he was giving me was the word and the language. So I was always feeling up, nodding my head on the inside. I know exactly what he's speaking about because I've had those experiences. So that's why I clicked with him and cling to him. I don't know if he feels the same way, but I just love him to death. He and all of my teachers at the seminary, it just, everything clicked for me. So in my interview at the seminary, as I sought to become a rabbinic student, Dr. Goldhamer asked me a question, and it was a very poignant question, and I had to really deeply think about it in the moment. But he asked me, why do I want to become a rabbi? And I really, in that moment, just almost had an out-of-body experience, but it was very three-dimensional. And my answer was, and I truly believe this, we were all standing there at the mountain to receive the Torah. The other item that was very important to me was the fact that I would be in an environment where I would be among deaf, hearing impaired, and people who are losing their hearing. That was me. I had gone through my professional life in meetings, leading organizations, but wearing hearing aids. And if sounds were not directed towards me in such a way, I would oftentimes lose part of the conversation, or I would have to extrapolate what the conversation was about. And that's a lot of work. And for the first time in my life, I felt like I was going into an environment where people might understand who I am and what I needed. So that's why, those are the two main reasons I selected the Hebrew Seminary at the time it was for the deaf. I was very excited as a mature individual to be in an environment where learning was going to be an experience and not a chore as it was when I was attending college and graduate school and in my professional life leading nonprofits and educational institutions. So that's
Thank you. Wow.
Basically, yeah.
I'm blown away, and I've heard the story a number of times.
Yeah.
Thank you. You know, it's
You're welcome.
Rabbi Goldhammer is, as I've often said, a man of all time and a man of no time. He is a man who could have lived on the mountain.
Sure could have, yeah.
And
he's closely connected, yeah.
And lives in thank God, still in this world today.
Yeah.
I'll turn it over to Charlene Brooks, who has also an extraordinary story. And Charlene, it's great to see you as always. Take it away.
After hearing Tirza, I don't know if I want to talk, but I will.
Okay.
It's not a competition.
Yeah, well, no, our stories are different. They're very different. And as Ellen said, I am working on my thesis, and it's more than just a paper to me. It's a plan. It's kind of a plan for how I care to go on and use my rabbinic life. But everybody who studies at the seminary, everybody who joins us, everybody has a different goal and a different experience. I mean, some people want to teach, some people want to be there to help others, others come there because they want to learn Kabbalah. Some people end up learning Kabbalah and they had absolutely no idea they had any interest in it, no knowledge of it, no way of knowing it's something that would really add so much to their life, and I was one of them. Growing up, I grew up in a very secular home, a Jewish home. My parents were both survivors of the Holocaust. And it was very confusing to me about religion. because we had meals for holidays. You know, we had wonderful Rosh Hashanah meals, and we broke the fast on Yom Kippur, but we didn't talk about God. It was never part of the conversation. And I've come to learn over the years that God and the study of religion are not necessarily the same thing. And I don't know if your experience has been like that or not, but spirituality and understanding the Jewish religion, it takes a little bit of work, because I remember when I first started singing, I cantor at the temple, at the B'nai Shalom. 25 years or 26 years I've been on the Bima with the rabbis, and it's been an amazing experience. I started singing the liturgy without the background that a lot of you may have or may not have. And I kind of learned as I went. It was a very different way of approaching Judaism. And
Hey,
so,
can I, Charlene, I have to just apologize to you. I'm not sure I mentioned that you are also the Cantorial Soloist
yeah,
at
that's okay.
Congregation B'nai Shalom, and a performance artist in her own right. So I apologize for missing that. Go ahead.
That's okay. So as I started singing on the Bima, learning the liturgy, and over the years incorporating them into my heart, I had a transformation that I wasn't expecting and I wasn't planning on. I just knew that I wanted to be there. I just knew that it was part of my soul. That's all I knew. And then after years of being on the Bima, I realized that there was more that I wanted to do. There was so much more I needed to do. I knew the seminary was there. I didn't plan on joining the seminary because I always felt like I'm on the Bima, I'm singing, and then the seminary, the students were learning. And then I realized that I have a mission. I have a mission to, one, help people as much as I can, and two, because of my experience, this was one of the driving forces in the beginning. Because of my experience in a home where the families, never, because of my parents' families were all lost in the Holocaust. None of them had a proper funeral. None of them. I mean, we're talking lots of people. And even as a young girl, I felt it was my mission to give them a funeral, to provide the proper help and guidance to those left behind, and honor those who have left us. And people say, oh, you want to do funerals? And I'm like, yeah, absolutely. I do, because it's so important at that moment when people are being honored to feel with the families and to express the wonderful lives that these people have experienced, or maybe not so wonderful lives that they've experienced. So that's part of my mission. The other part of my mission has been to pray with people, to help heal people, whether it's emotionally or physically. And I mean, of course, the Kabbalistic aspect of who I am now, I never planned on, trust me, never planned on it. Never thought that, when I first started learning it, it was something that I had to do, as the rabbi often says, fake it till you make it. And I tried, and I did, and then somewhere along the line, it just took into my soul, and the transformation has been magnificent. Now, students in the seminary don't all feel that way. A lot of people love history. A lot of the people love language. The Hebrew grammar. That's a big thing with a lot of people. They love it, and it's wonderful. And studying the Maimonides and all the different important classes that a rabbi needs. And then everywhere along the line, people find somewhere where they really feel home, where they really feel that, this is where I need to be. So starting classes with one plan, and it's wonderful for people who have that plan and they continue it on and they succeed in that one goal. I think that's fantastic. But there are some, like me, who start here, and along the way, we understand things about ourselves we never understood before. And you're landing here. And that's what I always thought with my kids when you started college. You wanted to be this major, that major. I was like, you're 18 years old. Do you really know who you are? Do you really know who you are? So give yourself an opportunity to become that person. And so you don't know until you know. I mean, that may sound too general, but it's true. You don't know until you know, and you don't find that out until you take some path. And I'm so grateful for the seminary helping me in that path. And scene.
Thank you, Charlene, for this unbelievable story. And I just want to also mention, when I said that the Hebrew Seminary is trans-denominational, it's not only for our students being trans-denominational and all-inclusive, it's also our faculty. Our faculty ranges from Reform to Orthodox. We have faculty of the highest degree of all denominations. We have a Talmudic scholar who actually was ordained by Rabbi Meir Lau in Israel, who was the chief rabbi of Israel. So, I can't emphasize enough how significant the Hebrew Seminary is. Tirza, could you contribute a little about what it is you are doing with your rabbinate?
Right now, I'm teaching both the Kabbalah and meditation, but in particular, the healing meditation as taught by, of course, our Rabbi, Dr. Goldhamer. So I convene 2 classes each week, and we do a healing meditation.
Good, and those people are extremely fortunate to be led and served by you.
Yeah, thank you.
Charlene, you want to talk? I'm sorry, you want to continue?
I also conduct speaking engagement on the internet webinars, speaking engagements that involve people across the country.
One of the amazing byproducts of the Zoom era is we have now reached all the way to the end of the East Coast. We're working our way west as well. One of the things that we do, of course, at B'nai Shalom through the efforts of Rabbi Goldhammer, we also have our assistant Rabbi Sherry Chen on the Zoom here, is listen, and we have a singing and signing choir led by Charlene Brooks. And so if you want to talk a little, Charlene, about singing and maybe share some signs. I'm sure everybody on this Zoom knows the Shema, but doesn't really know how we do the Shema and why we pick certain signs for it. So if you could educate us to that.
It's interesting because, my kids grew up in the temple, and my daughter took so much to sign language that she got her degree in ASL. And when at night, when she was having a difficult time, she would do certain prayers, always beginning with the Shema. And it's so ingrained, the sign language of the Shema, that even as she was falling asleep with her eyes closed, and she would kind of mumble the Shema, but she was signing it with great purpose. And it was just It was wonderful to behold. So the way
Teach
we,
us.
yeah, it was part of her. It is still part of her. So when we do the Shema, we interpret it because we have a deaf membership that we don't say, "Hear, O Israel."
No, we don't say here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't even sign that. I'm going to let Kathy do it. We don't say, "Hear, O Israel." We say, "Pay attention." It's not about the literal translation. It's about the meaning. It's very important to remember that, sign language is not just literal. It's paraphrasing. It's pictures. It's something that we have to translate the meaning of. So when we do the Shema, we do the sign, pay attention. And I would love it if those who are on screen, if you could do it with me, just to make everyone join together. So if you put your hands facing each other and just forward, and it's like pay attention, and with intention, not just moving your hands, but it's pay attention. And your little finger of your dominant hand, just circle it for Israel. And then you make an L, and you go from above your opposite shoulder down and across. That's the Lord. So it's pay attention, Israel, the Lord. And for our, we cup our hand and just bring it across for our God. And again, the L, the Lord is one. And let's try it again with the Hebrew. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. And if you want, I know you're all muted, but if you want to sing it with us, you can unmute and just do the Shema with us, because it's a prayer that we do many times during the day. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Thank
Beautiful, beautiful,
very much.
beautiful. Charlene mentioned something which is really interesting. There's a book by the late Oliver Sacks called Seeing Voices. And it talks about deafness and sign language. And it's about 20 years old. But he used an expression to talk about ASL, American Sign Language, as using spatial grammar, which I think is a wonderful idiom for the fact that sign language incorporates body movements and gestures, and all hand movements and eye movements mean something. I bring that up because I've seen the Shema. Obviously, pay attention is extremely important, because hearing is not, we can go into the root of the word Shema as hear ye. It's not necessarily listen or pay. It is more a pay attention. But I've seen the Lord is one as flickering of the fingers into a one, because the flickering of the fingers is a spatial grammar way of indicating a community. So a community is one. Charlene, Tirza, do you want to add anything before we open it up for questions and comments? By the way, you both were staggeringly wonderful.
Well, I would like to kind of dovetail on what Charlene and you, Alan, are the point that you're making in terms of the ASL. I was introduced to the language later in life, after having gone through life struggling with hearing. And then pursuing this passion and learning enough ASL to gain knowledge, gain understanding through ASL, using ASL. So no longer was learning two-dimensional. Suddenly it was three-dimensional. And it was an entire experience that it's like standing underneath a shower, and it's just engulfing you in terms of understanding. That's how, especially the topic of spirituality, Charlene spoke about, and those non-tangible that you find in wisdom. There's no really English word for. It's just an experience. It was just a beautiful way for me to experience learning and understanding. It's far deeper, and I wish I had learned it a lot earlier in my life. I think my life would have been a lot easier.
You know, those of us who grew up with American English really don't understand that we are speaking a third generation English that came from Latin, that came from other languages, and how many idioms we use that make no sense whatsoever when they're interpreted. You know, I often say, if you just think about an idiom, you know, the person had his back against the wall. Well, you can't interpret that literally. You have to create spatial grammar, and you have to create a three-dimensional reality to convey idioms, which I know I'm going to embarrass her, which is why Kathy Silvern is so competent interpreting, which I've done some on a lay basis, is extremely sort of a mental gymnastic reality. Shar, you want to talk about just a little more about how you got to B'nai Shalom?
Well, it's actually kind of funny. The rabbi was a customer when I was a young girl, a very young girl, of my parents' cleaning and tailoring shop. I didn't necessarily, you know, think anything that a future was going to be laid from that foundation. But years later, I have the good fortune of living a block away from the temple. So many of my friends were joining. They all had kids, and they were all around the same age, and we all joined. And something magical happened. It just spoke to my heart. And because the rabbi heard that I was a professional singer, singing for more years than most of you have been alive, and and so there was a Hanukkah service coming up, and he said, "Would you like to do a song?" And I said, "Yeah, sure." And one thing led to another, and suddenly I found myself on the bima, and amazingly grateful ever since. But I do think that and one thing, and I know Becky is going to talk about the seminary, but one thing that is so incredibly special about the seminary is that they care about each and every student. There is a fundamental dedication that each student do the best they can and have the most amount of help and support. I don't think you find that in a lot of other places. It is very specific to every student, and I'm grateful for that. I had to do a lot of catch up, and I was the teachers and the rabbis there really want everyone to succeed, even if it's just for learning. I mean, if you have no intention of becoming a rabbi, even if you just want to learn, it's still very specifically in line with helping each and every student.
And as Charlene said, Becky will give a little wrap up to what the seminary has to offer. We I just want to add that we also provide classes online. We provide teaching certificates. Not all of our students finish the rigorous 5-year program and thesis, but do become teachers. One actually early, and as I said, Naomi and Christopher and those in Toronto, one of our early students, and we're going on 30 years, did get a teaching certificate, and she was Canadian and from Toronto. So she, I'm not sure, I don't know quite what she's doing now. Maybe Becky or Rabbi Goldhammer does, but in any case, we do provide that. And Charlene's right. It's, you know, our faculty is, they show up not for the money. Believe me, they don't show up for the money. The dedication to and fro is just extraordinary.
Yeah.
So let me open it to questions, comments. And anybody have a comment or question? And if not, you don't have to raise your hand.
Yeah, I was like, all right, I'll sure. I'm a student. But first of all, I want to say thank you. The conversation on and sort of third dimensional prayer, I'm like struck very much by that, and that image is going to sit with me, I think, for a really long time. I mean, presumably forever. But another question I want to ask is, I'm just really intrigued by this trans-denominational approach that you guys take at the institution. I don't think there are many, well, I know that there are not many rabbinic sort of Jewish learning institutions that do take that approach. And I'm curious as to how that's navigated in the space. I guess I'm interested in sort of where some of your students have sort of taken that kind of education. I guess, I mean, I have lots of questions around it, but I'm just sort of curious about how that has worked. Also, if it's something that's helping to bring more people into your institution. Like, I think it's a really, anyway, that was where my question is.
Well, I think, you know, you're talking about the means and the end. You know, the means is a rigorous 5-year program that, aside from the added dimensions of healing, prayer, and Kabbalah, we're talking about Talmud and Torah, is you know, somewhat similar to many of the seminaries. But the fact that we open our seminary to people of any denomination and have a faculty of all denominations, I think makes the transition smooth for us. You know, for example, and I really don't want to pick specific ordinees by name per se, but we have ordinee, an alumni who was named by the Forward as one of the 25 most influential rabbis in America in 2018-19. He serves the homeless in Chicago. He serves, he has his own interesting conversation. He has an international following where he has taken Dungeons and Dragons and put it in a spiritual religious format. We have our 2 ordinees ago, we ordained a neurosurgeon. So, you know, a lot of our students so far are second career people, or people who are searching, people who are unsatisfied. So I don't know, the transition to being trans-denominational is not difficult for us, because once people understand what we have to offer, they understand that we offer you know, a full bona fide 5-year rigorous program. And so, you know, for us, it's...
Ellen, do you mind if I jump in?
No, please.
Okay, so
This is
my
Rabbi
name's-
Sherry Chen, our assistant rabbi, B'nai Shalom, and our
I'm the
administrator
associate
at the
rabbi
seminary.
now.
I'm sorry.
So I'm the associate rabbi, but I'm also the executive director of the seminary. So if you have any questions, feel free. It's Rabbi Chen at HebrewSeminary.org. I'd be happy to answer your questions. I'm also a graduate of the seminary. That's where my ordination came from about 16 years ago. When Rabbi Goldhammer started the seminary, he wanted to be able to provide other deaf and rabbis who could serve the deaf community. He kept getting calls. Can you come officiate here? Can you do this? And he went and he founded the seminary with the assistance of some wonderful rabbis who supported him in the Chicagoland area, and a couple of wonderful financiers that helped make this dream come into reality. And at the time, he went to many different rabbis. And that's how he ended up with Orthodox rabbis and conservative rabbis and Reform rabbis. And we still have continued that tradition after all these years. It's a wonderful program, but it's not just a wonderful rabbinic program. We also offer wonderful classes, as Becky and I can tell. We're just working on finishing, and I don't even think Ellen knows this, our semester for the fall, which will begin the week of like October 3rd, October 4th. And there's evening classes, there's Sunday classes, there's classes during the day. This time we are offering Aramaic. This taught by Rabbi Daniel Vaser. Isn't that unbelievable, Tirza?
Yeah, whoa.
Beautiful, my
Yeah,
friend.
whoa.
I mean, and I've been fortunate that I've had both Tirza and Charlene in my classes over time, and have taught them, and even Becky's standing on some of my classes. I'm doing an evening Torah class. We're taking a Parpare sheet. Tirza, you're welcome to come join. Anybody can come sign up. You can audit classes. You can become a seminary student. We're teaching Talmud. We're teaching Midrash. We're teaching the Shacharit service liturgy. Rabbi Goldhammer is doing a class with my assistants on Sunday mornings at 11. But the Shacharit service is a way of Kabbalistically speaking to God and how that connection is made through our prayers. We're also doing Hebrew, and Rabbi and I are doing a class on Pirkei Avot, but not the old Pirkei Avot, how it applies to everybody today, because we're going through biblical times. And our ancient sages have wisdom that can teach us forever. As people know, Rabbi and I take classes. Rabbi is probably one of the most well-versed Kabbalistic scholars I've ever had the honor and the privilege to work with. It's a long story, but basically I came to B'nai Shalom. I had just suffered from cancer and I had all these other things going on, and I prayed with him, and I was hospitalized on Rosh Hashanah. And the rabbi came to me, and I couldn't speak. And I said, God wants me to be your assistant rabbi. And that's how I came into the seminary. And 5 years later, I was ordained. Was his assistant rabbi and recently became his associate rabbi. So the seminary has so much to offer. So many different types of students. We've ordained such wonderful people like Tirza. We have deaf students, we have hearing students, we have, people that span the spectrum, that are interested in spirituality, that are interested in healing, we have some of our alumni work in universities and have been directors of Hillels. Some teach, some do meditation classes, some are hospital chaplains. So some are pulpit rabbis like me, but we offer so much. And if I sound like, because the seminary has become my life. And as Charlene said, it's not just my life, this is my family. This is where I feel at home. And Kathy's been a blessing to me. So, and many of our classes are sign language interpreted. I don't think I could do a lot of things that I do if I didn't have Kathy. And you know that's true, my friend. So hopefully, any questions, feel free to contact me anytime. And it's wonderful that you came. And as Shar said, we're much more of a family. And, you know, I love and I care for each of our students, and I will do whatever I can to make sure everybody, you know, succeeds.
I would like to conclude this with Becky Heidelberg, our highly competent marketing and fundraising manager, to just review what we have to offer. I just, to your question, Naomi, which is really an interesting question, it's not an easy question to answer, but I just want to say quickly that when Rabbi Goldhammer as a student rabbi started coming to Chicago from the Hebrew Union College in Cincinnati as a student rabbi, the deaf at best had a social relationship with Judaism. There was an organization called the Hebrew Association of the Deaf, and they were more of a social group. But Rabbi Goldhammer came and over time created and organized this wonderful group of deaf people into a more religious, formal Jewish organization. And Rabbi Goldhammer, to his credit, it would be an understatement, fought really hard to legitimize not only the deaf as Jews, as equal Jews, but to legitimize first the fact that we had a temple. And, you know, there are other organizations throughout the country and throughout the world that serve the Jewish deaf. We are the only synagogue that has the self-contained building now housing the seminary as well, and a full-time rabbi. So Rabbi Goldhammer has had to navigate, and the world really has had to navigate to him and accept him, because if we're going to serve the deaf, then we're going to serve everybody. And that's a very short way of just saying trans-denominational is just part of our motto.
I don't know, Alan, if it's been said that Rabbi Goldhammer is also the Rosh Yeshiva of the seminary.
Right.
I don't know if we introduced it.
I believe I mentioned the president.
You did? Okay, thank you.
But that's right. Becky, could you?
And just one thing, if you want to see what the seminary is about, and Becky will we have a YouTube channel, and there are past classes there. B'nai Shalom has its own. If you want to see what services look like, signing, we're doing Slichot services this Saturday night. Anybody is welcome to tune in, because everything is done by Zoom. So you can see a little bit more about us. I'm going to let my Becky take over from here.
No problem. First of all, thank you, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay,
We
good.
can.
Just checking. Just wanted to thank you all so much for being here. It's lovely to spend this afternoon with you, and really appreciate you being here. I want to thank Alan, who was instrumental in really getting this going, and Heather, thank you so much, and Rabbi Tirza and Shar and Rabbi Sherry for being here, and Rabbi Goldhammer is here too, and Tom, who is the chairman of the board for Hebrew Seminary. So I'll just tell you a little bit more. I think we've covered a lot of ground here today, but I'll just give you a little bit more updates on what we have going on. Really brief, I actually was connected to the seminary right after graduate school, because I moved back to Chicago and I was looking for spirituality and for a class with Kabbalah. And really Hebrew Seminary B'nai Shalom is one of the only places in Chicago that teaches classes, different Kabbalistic classes. So it kind of came full circle, because now I work for the seminary, I don't know, 8 to 10 years later, I can't remember the exact time. And I've started in March, and it's just an amazing community. I'm so grateful to be a part of it. And I'm just going to share with you a little bit about what we have going on. Elliot had messaged me a question, can you take classes remotely? Thank you, Elliot. Excellent question, because I actually think for us, the pandemic has been great in terms of exposure and having people learn about all the amazing things that we offer. As far as I know, before we were more focused on Chicagoland area, and now with things being remote, we've had people join us nationally, internationally to take classes. And so that's been a blessing that's actually come out of this time. And the classes that we have coming up, Rabbi Sherry covered a lot of them. The semester will begin after the high holidays. We're also going to have a special 3-part class with Rabbi Goldhammer on Kabbalah specifically. So that way, if you don't want to take, 10 classes in a whole semester, you can join just for that class, which will be great. And like Rabbi Sherry said, you can, if you're interested in the rabbinic program, you can take classes towards a rabbinic degree, but you can also audit classes just because you want to learn. You're interested in certain subjects. And we also have different events and programs like today. So we have, for Hanukkah, we have a wine tasting coming up. It's going to be a virtual wine tasting. We're going to have Hanukkah kits, and you can join from wherever you are in the world. We'll have a sommelier talk about the wine. There'll be different wines from Israel. I believe Shar will be there to lead us in some Hanukkah songs and blessings, and it should be a really nice time. We might have a meditation and just another way to celebrate the holidays with us. And I posted in there all our social media, so we're pretty active on Instagram, on Facebook. YouTube has a lot of our classes on there as well, so that you can check them out there. And just trying to say, I want to make sure I cover everything. There's also going to be a 10-minute short documentary about Rabbi Goldhammer that will be coming out. And this is, I know I'm being recorded, but it's sort of off the record. It'll be coming out the end of September, International Death Awareness Week. Rabbi Goldhammer is a true visionary. People talk about being inclusive now, but Rabbi Goldhammer really thought about this 30, 40 years ago. And so to really learn about him, his life, his contributions, and everything that he's done, it should be really special. So if you want, you can message me as well. It's badelberg@hebrewseminary.org. We send out a monthly newsletter that talks about all our different offerings. We don't spam people too much, so don't worry. It's just once a month. And that way you can find out about the different things that are happening. And I think that covers pretty much everything. We have a few more minutes, so if people want to ask questions.
Becky, could you just elaborate briefly on how individuals can access classes and sign up or audit classes? Do they just go to the seminary website, or?
There is a contact us at the seminary website. We are actually getting a new website, which will be coming on the next month, which is going to look amazing and has a blog and a lot of different features to it. But you can either contact me or Rabbi Sherry, or just go to the contact us form at hebrewseminary.org to find out more.
So the Hebrew Seminary has a YouTube channel, as Becky said, which contains a number of events that we've had. B'nai Shalom has a YouTube channel that for the most part presents recorded services, either Shabbat services or Kabbalistic meditative services that Rabbi Goldhammer leads. So there's a lot out there, and we are all incredibly grateful to Rabbi Chen and Becky Adelberg for Zooming, if you pardon the pun, our seminary really past the Midwest, and we're excited to do this today, and hopefully you guys can spread the word to other Moishe houses or Hillels or anybody you can think of, any organization that would be interested in hearing our story.
Absolutely. And that's a great segue to say kind of thank you on behalf of Moishe House too for reaching out. So for a little bit of context, Moishe House is a network of different houses and beyond. There's lots of programming, but primarily aged at folks in their 20s and 30s, and ways to kind of find community, engage Jewishly. Some things that I feel like in some ways touch on Tirza and Charlene, what you were speaking of in your own journey. So maybe a few years back from where you are now, but reaching people like that. And you can find Moishe House Somerville on Facebook, and I think Maple Leaf Gardens Toronto as well. And it's just really sweet to keep these webs connected and to see the way that Zoom allows us to reach internationally and across the country too. So thanks for all that you've offered and for your time today to share with us and give us learning to bring back to our communities.
More than a pleasure.
Thank you.
It's been fun, and we try to make this casual, and thank you, Rabbi Tirza, and soon to be Rabbi Charlene, and Becky and Rabbi Chen. So
And wishing you all a happy, healthy, good new year.
Yes.
Shana Tova.
And that's over.
take
Thank you,
care,
Ellen.
everybody, and stay dry.
Thanks so much.
Not to